In the quiet village of Abney, there lived a young blind girl named Lara. She had lost her sight when she was a child, but she never lost her smile. Every morning she would sit under the big mango tree near the stream, humming songs that made people stop and listen. The villagers loved her gentle voice and her kind spirit. Even though she was poor, she was always ready to help anyone who needed a hand. One bright morning, the sound of galloping hooves echoed near the stream. A horse ran wildly and soon a loud thud followed. Lara heard it and quickly stood up. "Is someone there?" she asked, reaching out with her hands. The man groaned in pain. He had fallen from his horse after it slipped on a rock. Lara walked carefully toward the sound. Though she could not see him, she moved with care and calm. "Please don't move too much," she said softly. "You might be hurt." The man was surprised by her courage. "I'm fine," he said weakly, trying to sit up, but his leg hurt. Lara tore a piece of her old wrapper and wrapped it gently around his leg. Her hands were steady and warm. "You should rest for a moment," she said kindly. The man looked at her in wonder. Her eyes were closed, but her face was calm and full of peace. "You're very kind," he said. Lara smiled. "Kindness costs nothing," she replied. "What is your name?" The man hesitated. He didn't want her to know who he really was. "My name is Tund," he said simply. She nodded. "I am Lara. You are safe now, Tund. I will call my uncle to help you." Her uncle and some neighbors came and helped the stranger to the village. They gave him food and a mat to rest on. Lara stayed by his side, giving him herbs to ease the pain. He was touched by how she cared for him, even though she didn't know who he was. Prince Tund had been riding through the forest to clear his mind. Life in the palace was full of pressure. His father, the king, always demanded perfection. He wanted his son to marry a noble lady and prepare to rule the land. But Tund often felt trapped behind golden walls. When his horse fell and he met Lara, something inside him changed. She was simple, gentle, and free from pride. She saw the world not with her eyes but with her heart. The next morning when Tund woke up, he heard Lara singing outside. Her voice was soft and pure, rising with the sound of birds. He smiled and walked toward her. She heard his steps and said, "Good morning, Tund. Did you rest well?" "I did," he said. "And your song? It's beautiful." Lara laughed shyly. "It's an old song my mother used to sing. It reminds me that light is not only in the eyes. It's also in the heart." Tund sat beside her and listened for a long time. For the first time in many years he felt peace. He forgot about his title in the palace. In Abney he was not a prince. He was just a man sitting beside a kind girl who couldn't see him, yet seemed to know him better than anyone else ever had. Days turned into weeks, and Tund began to visit Lara more often. Each time he came with something, fruits, fabric, or simple gifts. But what she loved most was when he sat quietly beside her and listened to her stories. She told him about her childhood, how she lost her sight after a sickness, and how her parents had died when she was young. She lived with her uncle now, helping him weave mats to sell in the market. "You have suffered a lot," Tund said one day, his voice filled with sadness. Lara smiled. "Maybe. But I still have life and I still have songs. Some people have sight but no peace. I have peace." Her words touched his heart deeply. He admired her strength. She didn't complain, she didn't envy, and she didn't ask for anything. She only gave, her time, her kindness, her smile. As time passed, their bond grew stronger. The people in the village began to notice how often Tund came. Some whispered that he might be in love, but Lara didn't believe it. "He is a good friend," she would say, though her heart beat faster every time she heard his voice. One evening, the sky turned golden as the sun set behind the hills. Lara sat by the stream, singing softly. Tund came quietly and placed something in her hand, a small wooden flute. "I carved it myself," he said. "So you can remember me whenever you play it." Lara smiled, touching the flute gently. "It feels beautiful. Thank you, Tund." He hesitated, then asked, "Lara, if I told you I was not who you think I am, would you still treat me the same?" She tilted her head. "I treat people by their hearts, not their names," she said. Her words filled him with warmth. He wanted to tell her the truth, that he was the prince, but he feared it would change everything. In her world he was just Tund, the man she sang for. He didn't want to lose that. That night as he walked back to the palace he thought deeply. His mind was full of her voice, her laughter, and her calm spirit. He realized he had found something rare, love that was not built on gold or power. It was real and pure. Back in the palace, his father noticed how quiet he had become. "Tund," the king said one morning, "I have chosen a bride for you, the daughter of a nobleman." She will make a fine queen. Tund bowed his head. Father, I am not ready, he said softly. The king frowned. A prince does not wait for readiness. He obeys. Tund's heart grew heavy. He wanted to tell his father about Lara, but he knew it would cause anger. How could a blind village girl ever be accepted as a princess? The thought broke his heart. Still, he continued to visit her in secret. They walked by the stream and spoke of dreams. Lara often said she wanted to open a small school for blind children one day. No one should feel useless because they cannot see, she said. If I ever get help, I will teach others to live with courage. Tund looked at her and smiled. You already teach me every day, he whispered. The bond between them grew deeper. But in the back of Tund's mind, he feared the truth. He knew that someday the world of the prince and the world of the blind girl would collide. Still, he couldn't stay away. One evening when the moon was full, Lara played the wooden flute for him. The sound was soft and sad. This song is for the one who brings light into my darkness, she said. Tund felt tears in his eyes. He wanted to tell her that she was the one who brought light into his life too. As the music echoed through the night, the prince and the blind girl sat together by the stream. Two hearts from different worlds, joined by love that neither fame nor blindness could destroy. For that moment, nothing else mattered. Not crowns, not eyes, not wealth, only the quiet peace that lived between them. And though the night was silent, their hearts spoke the same truth. The end. The kingdom of Irisa was full of joy and color. Flags waved in the air, drums beat loudly, and dancers filled the palace courtyard. The king had announced a grand festival to celebrate the harvest season. People came from far and near, dressed in their best clothes. The sound of laughter and music filled the air like never before. Prince Tund stood beside his father, smiling at the crowd. He looked like a man who had everything: wealth, power, and respect. But deep inside, his thoughts were still in the small village of Abney, where a blind girl named Lara lived. For months, Tund had been visiting Lara secretly. He loved her kindness and the peace she brought to his heart. Yet he never told anyone about her. In the palace, people spoke only of riches and beauty. He feared they would mock her if they knew she was blind and poor. But whenever he thought of her smile, his heart softened. That evening, as the festival began, a new guest arrived. A woman whose beauty caught everyone's attention. She stepped down from her golden carriage, her gown shining under the moonlight. Her name was Zara. She was the daughter of a rich trader from a neighboring land. Her eyes were sharp, her lips red like ripe fruit, and her smile glowed with confidence. The crowd turned to watch her walk into the palace hall. Even the queen whispered, "What a beautiful woman." Prince Tund looked at her once and could not look away. She moved like she knew the whole world was watching her, and she enjoyed it. When she spoke, her voice was smooth like honey. "Your Highness," she said, bowing slightly before Tund, "it is an honor to meet the prince everyone talks about." Tund smiled politely. "You are welcome to Irisa. Please enjoy the festival." Zara laughed softly. "How can I not enjoy it when the prince himself greets me?" Her charm was powerful. As the evening went on, she danced gracefully in the middle of the hall, her golden dress spinning with the rhythm of the drums. Every eye followed her, and every man admired her. Even Tund found himself clapping and smiling. For a moment, he forgot everything else: the village, the stream, and the blind girl waiting for him far away. When the dance ended, Zara walked up to him again. "You didn't dance," she said playfully. "I am not very good at it," Tund replied, laughing. "That's because you haven't danced with the right person," she said with a wink. Her boldness surprised him, but it also drew him in. He had never met a woman like her. Lara was gentle and quiet, but Zara was bold and full of energy. She talked about cities, expensive clothes, and her travels. She spoke of grand parties and how people admired her wherever she went. Tund listened, half amazed and half confused. This was a world he knew, the world of the rich, but he had almost forgotten it since meeting Lara. As the days passed, Zara stayed at the palace as a royal guest. She brought laughter and noise wherever she went. The servants ran around to please her, and the queen liked her charm. The king also seemed pleased, saying she would make a fine princess someday. Tund's heart began to change slowly. Each day he spent more time with Zara, walking in the royal garden, riding horses, and attending feasts. She told him stories of faraway lands, about gold markets and grand ships. She made him laugh, and she made him feel proud to be a prince again. But deep down, a small voice whispered in his heart, reminding him of Lara's soft songs and kind words. He pushed the thought away. "I will visit her soon," he told himself. But soon never came. In the village of Abney, Lara sat under the mango tree every evening, holding the small wooden flute Tund had given her. Each sunset, she waited for the sound of his horse, but it never came. Her uncle would say, "Maybe he is busy, child. Princes have many duties." Lara smiled and nodded. "I know. He will come when he can." But every night, she went to bed with an empty heart. Back in the palace, Tund had begun to forget the peace he once felt. Zara kept him busy with endless excitement. She took him to fancy gatherings, made him wear new robes, and told him he deserved the best things in life. "You are a prince," she would say. "You shouldn't waste your time in small villages with simple people. Your place is here, among those who shine." Her words made him proud, and slowly he began to believe her. One afternoon, Zara took Tund to the royal market. The people bowed as they passed. She pointed at jewelry, gold chains, and expensive fabrics. "See how they admire us," she said, smiling proudly. "You and I belong to this life, Tund. Not that dull one you hide from everyone." Tund looked around and felt a strange feeling, pride mixed with guilt. He knew she was talking about Lara, but he didn't say anything. A few days later, Lara decided to go to the stream again. She sat by the water, playing the flute softly. A little boy from the village came running to her. "Sister Lara, the prince's guards passed through the road today. They were heading to the city again." Lara smiled. "Then maybe he will visit me soon." But deep down she knew something had changed. In the palace, Zara's influence grew stronger. She was always beside Tund, whispering into his ear, laughing at his jokes, making him feel important. When he mentioned Lara once, Zara frowned and said, "A blind girl? You're joking, right? What could you ever have in common with someone like that?" Tund felt embarrassed. "She is just a friend," he said quietly. "Then keep her as a memory," Zara said sharply. "You are a prince. You should walk with queens." That night, Tund couldn't sleep. He looked out at the stars and thought about Lara's words, "Love built on truth never fades." He tried to remember her face, her soft laughter, the way she said his name. But Zara's voice kept echoing in his mind, drowning out everything else. Days turned into weeks. The path to Abony grew cold. The villagers began to whisper that the prince had forgotten the blind girl. Lara stopped waiting by the road. She spent more time teaching the village children songs, even though her heart ached quietly. In the palace, Tund stood beside Zara at another royal gathering. People praised their beauty together, calling them the golden pair. Zara smiled proudly, holding his arm. Tund smiled too, but deep inside, his heart felt strangely empty. He laughed, but it didn't sound real. As the music played, he thought of the stream, the mango tree, and the wooden flute. For a moment, he wished he could go back, to the simple laughter and peaceful days. But he pushed the thought away again. He told himself that this was the life he was meant to live, full of light, gold, and admiration. Yet, as Zara danced in front of the crowd, Tund felt a small pain in his chest, a quiet whisper that he had lost something precious. Far away in Abony, Lara lifted the flute to her lips and played a slow, gentle tune. The sound floated through the night, soft and sad, as if calling out for someone who no longer remembered. And somewhere in the palace, though surrounded by noise and beauty, Prince Tund felt a sudden stillness in his heart, like a memory trying to speak. He ignored it, but it did not go away. The sun had already set behind the hills of Abony, leaving a golden glow over the village. The air was quiet except for the sound of crickets and the soft flow of water from the stream. Lara sat under the old mango tree where she and Tund used to meet. She held the small wooden flute he had given her and ran her fingers gently along its smooth surface. Every evening, she waited there, hoping to hear the familiar sound of his horse. But for many weeks, the road had been silent. Her heart told her something was wrong. The last time he had come, his words were distant. He had smiled, but it wasn't the same smile that used to warm her heart. Still, she waited with hope. She believed love could never truly fade. That night, the moon was full and bright. Lara whispered softly, "Tund will come tonight. I can feel it." Her uncle, who was sitting nearby, looked at her with pity. "My child," he said kindly, "maybe the prince is busy. He is a man of many duties." Lara nodded slowly. "Yes, uncle. I understand. But love does not forget, does it?" The old man sighed. "No, child, it does not. But people do." Lara smiled faintly, though her heart felt heavy. Hours passed and the night grew darker. Then at last she heard footsteps approaching. Her heart leapt with joy. "Tund?" she called softly. "Yes," came his reply, but his voice was cold and distant. She stood up quickly, smiling. "You came. I was waiting for you." He didn't answer right away. His silence made her uneasy. She reached out her hand, searching for him. "Tund, are you all right?" He took a deep breath. "Lara," he said quietly, "I came to tell you something." Her smile faded. "What is it?" He looked away even though she couldn't see him. The guilt in his heart was heavy, but his pride forced him to speak. "I can't keep seeing you. Things have changed. You deserve someone better." For a moment, Lara didn't understand. "Someone better?" she repeated softly. "I don't need anyone better. I only need the man I love." Tund turned his face away. "I am not that man anymore," he said. "My life is in the palace. You belong here in your world. I belong in mine." Her hands trembled and her lips quivered. "Did I do something wrong?" she whispered. "No, Lara. You did nothing wrong. It's just, we can't be together. It's not possible." There was silence between them. The night breeze carried the faint scent of flowers, but to Lara, everything felt empty. She tried to smile, though tears filled her blind eyes. "If leaving me makes you happy, then go, my prince. But remember, love built on truth never fades." Tund's heart broke at her words, but he said nothing. He turned and walked away quickly. Lara stood still, listening to the fading sound of his footsteps. When she could hear nothing but the wind, she finally let her tears fall. That night, she sat alone by the stream, her flute resting in her lap. "You promised to stay," she whispered. "You said you would never leave." Her tears dropped into the water, and the ripples spread slowly as if carrying her pain away. In the palace, Tund walked into his chamber and closed the door. He leaned against the wall, feeling the weight of what he had done. He had chosen pride over love, comfort over truth. Zara's words still echoed in his mind, "You are a prince. You must walk with queens." The next morning, the whole kingdom buzzed with news. The prince was getting engaged to Zara, the beautiful woman from the royal city. The people cheered, the musicians played, and the palace was decorated with gold and flowers. Everyone spoke about how perfect they looked together. Tund stood beside Zara during the ceremony, wearing a golden robe. She smiled proudly at the crowd while holding his arm. But behind his smile, his heart felt hollow. The music was loud, but in his mind, he heard only the quiet sound of a wooden flute by the stream. In the small hut in Ebony, Lara heard the news too. A group of women passing through the village were talking about the engagement. "The prince is finally marrying that fine lady Zara," one of them said. "They say she shines like the sun." Lara sat quietly listening. Her uncle looked at her with worry. "Child, you shouldn't listen to such talk," he said softly. Lara forced a smile. "It's all right, uncle. The prince deserves happiness." But when the women left, she turned her face away and covered her mouth to stop her sobs. That night, she took out the small wooden pendant that Tund had given her months ago. It was shaped like a heart, simple but precious. She held it close to her chest. "He gave me this when he said he would never forget me," she whispered. But promises fade faster than light. The next few days were silent and lonely. Lara stopped singing. The children in the village noticed she no longer sat by the stream. She spent most of her time inside, weaving mats for her uncle. Her world, once full of hope, now felt empty. Yet even in her pain she refused to hate him. "Love does not turn to anger," she told herself. "It only turns to silence." Meanwhile in the palace, Zara's charm grew stronger. She was surrounded by luxury and attention. She laughed loudly, telling stories of her travels, while Tund sat beside her in silence. She noticed his quietness and said, "You think too much, my prince. You should learn to enjoy life." Tund smiled weakly. "Yes, perhaps I should." At night, when everyone was asleep, he would walk to the palace balcony and look out toward the forest that led to Ebony. He could almost hear Lara's voice in the wind, soft, gentle, forgiving. The thought made him ache inside. But pride kept him still. He told himself it was too late to go back. Weeks passed. Zara became the center of the royal court. Everyone admired her beauty and confidence. But Tund no longer felt the peace he once had. He smiled in front of others, but the joy in his eyes was gone. Lara, on the other hand, slowly learned to live with her pain. She started to sing again, though her songs were softer now, full of longing but also strength. The villagers said her voice carried healing. "She sings like someone who has lost and forgiven," an old woman said one evening. Every time Lara sang, she touched the wooden pendant and whispered, "May he find the truth he left behind." The prince never heard those words, but sometimes, when the wind blew through the palace garden, he felt a strange calmness, as if her spirit was near. He couldn't explain it, but deep inside he knew that somewhere in that quiet village, a blind girl still remembered him, not with anger but with love. The kingdom celebrated the prince's new life, but in the corners of his heart, there was a shadow that would not fade. He had gained the world's applause but lost the one heart that had loved him without seeing his crown. And in the small hut of ebony, under the soft glow of the moon, Lara sat quietly by her window, her hands wrapped around the wooden pendant. Her tears had stopped, but her heart still whispered his name. She smiled faintly and said, "Even if he forgets, love remembers." The wind blew gently through the trees, carrying her soft voice through the night, a song of love, loss, and unbroken faith. When the wedding between Prince Tund and Zara took place, the kingdom of Irisa celebrated for 7 long days. There was music, dancing, food, and laughter. Everyone spoke of how beautiful the new princess was. Her golden gown sparkled like the sun, and her voice charmed every guest in the palace hall. The king and queen were proud, and Tund stood beside her with a smile that looked perfect but hid a quiet emptiness in his heart. At first, everything seemed like a dream. Zara filled the palace with excitement and fashion. She changed the look of every room, ordered new furniture from foreign lands, and threw parties every week. Servants ran in and out, carrying perfumes, silks, and jewels. She laughed often and spoke loudly, and everyone wanted to please her. Tund watched her move through the palace like a shining star, and for a while, he believed he had made the right choice. But as days turned into months, the glow began to fade. Zara's laughter grew sharper, her smile more forced. She complained about everything, the weather, the food, even the servants. "This palace is too plain," she would say. "A queen should live surrounded by gold, not dull stone walls." Tund tried to please her, buying her more jewels and fine clothes. But nothing ever made her happy for long. When Tund sat quietly in the royal garden, she mocked him. "Why do you sit there like an old man?" she asked. "You're a prince, not a farmer. Go enjoy yourself. Throw another feast." Tund would smile weakly and say, "Not every day needs noise, Zara. Sometimes peace is better." She rolled her eyes. "Peace? That's just another word for boredom." Soon she began to treat the servants badly. If her food was cold, she shouted. If her dress had one thread loose, she threw it away. The people started whispering that their new princess was proud and heartless. "She has beauty but no soul," some said. Others shook their heads and murmured, "Our prince has lost his wisdom." Tund heard the whispers and felt ashamed. He tried to defend her at first, saying, "She only needs time to adjust." But deep inside he knew the truth. The woman he had married was nothing like the one he had imagined. He remembered Lara's soft voice, her calm smile, and her kind hands that once bandaged his wound. The memory pained him. One evening, during a royal dinner, Zara made fun of him in front of the nobles. "My husband is too quiet," she said with a laugh. "Sometimes I wonder if he even knows how to speak." The guests laughed nervously. Tund lowered his head, humiliated. Later, when he spoke to her privately, he said gently, "Zara, it's not right to mock your husband before others." She laughed again. "Oh, stop pretending to be hurt. You should thank me for keeping this palace lively. Without me, you'd bore everyone to sleep." Her words cut him deeply. That night, Tund could not sleep. He walked to the balcony and looked at the moon. He thought of the small village of Ebony and the blind girl who once sang under the mango tree. Her voice had brought peace to his heart, but he had traded it for noise and pride. He closed his eyes and whispered, "What have I done?" As months passed, Zara's greed grew. She began demanding more gold and jewels from the royal treasury. "I want a necklace made of real diamonds," she said one morning. "And I want a new set of robes for every day of the week." Tund frowned. "Zara, the treasury is not endless. We must care for the people too." She scoffed. "The people? Let them care for themselves. You're a prince, act like one." The royal advisors warned Tund that the treasury was running low. "Your Highness," one said, "if this continues, the kingdom's funds will not last the year." Tund nodded sadly. "I understand." But Zara did not stop spending. She began hosting grand parties, inviting wealthy visitors from other lands. She wanted to be admired and praised. During those feasts, she laughed with other men and ignored her husband. One evening, when Tund tried to speak with her, she turned away. "Don't be jealous, Tund," she said. "I'm just entertaining guests." He said nothing. His heart felt heavier each day. The people of Irisa started to see the change in their prince. The once humble man who used to ride through the villages now rarely left the palace. His smile was gone. Farmers whispered that the prince's heart had grown cold. Old women prayed that the kind prince they once loved would find his way again. Then one morning the truth struck like lightning. A servant ran into Tund's chamber, trembling. "Your Highness," he cried, "the princess is gone." Tund stood up in shock. "Gone? What do you mean?" "She left before sunrise, my lord. She took the royal carriage, and the king's jewels." Tund felt his legs weaken. He rushed to Zara's room. The chests of gold were open, the shelves empty. The perfumes, the robes, the crowns, all gone. On the table she had left a single note that read, "You bored me. I found someone who knows how to live." The words cut through his heart like a knife. He sat on the floor, staring at the letter until his eyes filled with tears. For a long time he didn't move. The palace grew silent. No one dared to speak. The news spread quickly. The people whispered again, this time with pity. "Our prince has lost everything," they said. "He gave his heart to a woman of gold and she left him with dust." Days turned into weeks. Tund stopped attending royal meetings. He spent most of his time alone in the garden, staring at the empty fountain. The king tried to speak to him, but he only said, "Father, I have learned my lesson too late." The once proud prince now walked through the palace halls without joy. Every sound reminded him of his mistake. The sound of laughter, the echo of footsteps, even the rustle of silk reminded him of Zara's false beauty. He thought of Lara again, of her soft voice saying, "Love built on truth never fades." Her words now burned inside him like fire. One afternoon Tund went to the stables and took his horse. He rode away from the palace, through the forest, past the fields, until he reached the edge of the river. There he stopped and looked at his reflection in the water. The man he saw was not the same prince who once smiled with hope. His eyes were tired, his heart heavy. "I traded love for pride," he whispered. "I traded light for glitter." A tear rolled down his cheek and fell into the water. He sat by the river for hours, lost in thought. The sound of the wind reminded him of Lara's flute, soft and pure. He realized that the peace he once felt had come not from riches, but from a heart that saw him for who he truly was. When night came, Tund turned his horse around and rode back slowly. The palace no longer felt like home. It was full of memories he wished he could erase. The next morning he told his father, "I need time away from the crown. I have lost my way and I must find it again." The king looked at him with sorrow. "Then go, my son. May you find what you have forgotten." And so Prince Tund left the palace quietly. He wore no crown, no robe, no gold, only a simple cloth and a heart full of regret. As he rode through the dusty road, he whispered to himself, "Perhaps love built on truth never fades. Maybe it still waits somewhere, under a mango tree." He did not know if Lara would ever forgive him. But for the first time in many months he felt a small spark of hope, the kind that only a broken heart can feel when it remembers what truly matters. Tund wandered for many days. The prince who once had servants to dress him now walked barefoot, covered in dust. The sun burned his skin and the nights were cold. He had no food, no comfort, and no joy left in his heart. Everywhere he went, people recognized him and whispered, "Is that not Prince Tund? What happened to him?" But Tund did not answer anyone. He only bowed his head and kept walking. He wanted peace and forgiveness. He passed through towns and villages, through forests and quiet roads. Sometimes he slept under trees, other times in old barns. He ate whatever kind people gave him. One evening he sat near a small river and thought about the life he had once lived. He remembered the palace, the feasts, the gold, the laughter, and how empty it all felt now. He also remembered Lara's small hut, her calm voice, and the way her smile made the world seem kind. His heart ached. One morning, after many weeks of wandering, he reached a small village surrounded by tall palm trees. Children ran around laughing and playing. Their joy made him stop for a moment. He saw a small building at the end of the path, made of clay and wood. A sign hung above the door that said, "Home of Light." Curious, Tund walked closer. As he neared the building, he heard a soft song floating through the air. The voice was gentle, full of warmth and peace. It made him stop in his tracks. His heart began to beat faster. He knew that voice. It was the same voice that once sang under the mango tree in Ebony. The same voice that healed his heart long ago. He walked slowly toward the door and looked inside. The room was simple. No gold, no luxury. Just wooden chairs, a few beds, and many smiling children. Some were blind, some were poor, and others were orphans. In the middle of the room sat a woman wearing a plain white dress, her hair tied neatly behind her head. She was teaching a small blind boy how to read Braille with his fingers. And though her eyes were closed and pale, her face glowed with peace. Tund felt his knees grow weak. It was Lara. For a long time he stood by the doorway, unable to speak. His throat tightened and his eyes filled with tears. When the children noticed him, they ran to tell Lara that someone was at the door. She turned her face toward the sound and smiled gently. "Welcome," she said softly. "Please come in." Tund stepped forward slowly, his heart beating hard. He fell to his knees before her. His voice shook as he said, "Lara, it's me, Tund." The room went quiet. The children looked at him curiously. Lara tilted her head slightly, her face calm. "Prince Tund," she said softly, recognizing his voice. "It has been a long time." Tund's eyes filled with tears. "Lara, I wronged you. I was proud and foolish. I let my heart be blinded by beauty and lies. And because of that, I lost everything, my peace, my joy, even my name." Lara reached out her hand gently until it touched his face. Her fingers trembled for a moment, but her touch was kind. "Tund," she said, "I forgave you long ago. My eyes may be blind, but I still see with my heart. I pray you have learned to do the same." Tund bowed his head. "You are kinder than I deserve. You had nothing and yet you gave me love. I had everything and I threw it away." Lara smiled faintly. "We all make mistakes, Tund. Some lose their way through pride. Others through pain. But what matters is that we learn and become better." He looked around the room at the children. "You built this place?" he asked quietly. "Yes," she said. "After you left, I was lost for a while. But then I met other children who were blind like me, children with no family, no food, no hope. I thought of how you once helped me and I decided to help them too. This home became my purpose." Tund's heart swelled with admiration. "You are the true light of this land," he said softly. "You who cannot see have helped others to live and dream." She smiled again. "I do not need eyes to see love, Tund. Love is not something we look at, it is something we feel." For the first time in many years, Tund felt peace inside his heart. He stayed with Lara that day, watching her teach and sing with the children. Her voice filled the room with calmness. Even the smallest child, who could not speak, smiled as she sang. Later that evening, Tund helped the children carry water from the stream and served them food. They laughed and played around him, asking questions. One of the children said, "You speak like a prince." Tund smiled sadly and replied, "I was one once. But today I just want to be a helper." That night, when the children were asleep, Tund sat outside beside Lara. The moon shone softly and the wind carried the sound of crickets. He said quietly, "Lara, I wish I could turn back time. I would choose differently." Lara shook her head gently. "Do not live in the past, Tund. The lessons we learn from pain are gifts too. Perhaps you had to lose everything to find your heart again." He nodded slowly. "You are right. I was blind though I could see. And you saw clearly though you could not see the world." They sat in silence for a while, the cool air wrapping around them like a soft blanket. The next morning, Tund told Lara that he wanted to help her with the orphanage. "Let me stay," he said. "Let me use my hands and my strength to care for these children. Not as a prince, but as a man who wishes to make things right." Lara hesitated for a moment, then smiled. "If that is truly what you want, then help us. But promise me something, Tund." "What promise?" he asked. "Promise me that you will not serve out of guilt, but out of love. The children do not need a broken heart. They need a kind one." Tund nodded. "I promise." From that day, Tund worked beside her. He helped fix the roof, plant crops, and build new rooms. The children loved him dearly. They called him Uncle Tund, and followed him everywhere. He taught them how to read, play games, and tell stories. He even made wooden toys for them from the trees nearby. Sometimes he watched Lara teaching under the mango tree and thought of how far they had both come. She had lost her sight, but she had gained purpose. He had lost his crown, but he had found peace. One afternoon, a group of villagers visited the orphanage. They recognized Tund and bowed deeply. "Your Highness," one of them said, "the kingdom has changed. People say you disappeared after the princess left. The king is old now and wants you to return." Tund shook his head gently. "Tell my father I am well. I have found what I was truly searching for." When the villagers left, Lara turned to him and said softly, "You gave up the palace?" He smiled. "Yes. The palace had walls of gold, but no warmth. Here there is love, and that is more valuable than any crown." Over time the orphanage grew. With Tund's help, they built more rooms and brought in more children. Together, Tund and Lara changed many lives. The people of nearby villages started calling it the House of Light, for it was said that those who entered left with joy in their hearts. Years passed. Lara grew older, but her smile never faded. Tund, now humble and wise, became a man people respected not for his title, but for his kindness. And though their love had changed, it never died, it simply became something deeper. One evening as the sun set behind the hills, a traveler who had once known Tun saw him teaching a group of children. I heard the blind girl. The end.